Somebody in your life is playing a game you don't even know exists. They're smiling at you while quietly deciding whether you're useful. They're agreeing with you in the room and undoing you the moment you leave it. And the terrifying part? You've been taught your whole life that noticing this makes you the bad person. Niccolo Machiavelli would tell you the opposite. He'd tell you that the real danger isn't the person playing the game. It's you, standing on the field, refusing to admit a game is being played at all. Welcome back to the channel. Today we go inside the mind of the most misunderstood man in the history of philosophy. A man whose name became a slur, whose book got banned by the church, and whose ideas quietly run every boardroom, every campaign, every negotiation you've ever lost without knowing why. Here's what almost nobody tells you about Niccolo Machiavelli. He wasn't a monster sitting in a tower dreaming up cruelty for sport. He was a mid-level government official who got fired, arrested, tortured, and exiled by the very people he'd spent his career serving loyally. He wrote his masterwork not from a position of power, but from the ashes of losing all of it. Every law you're about to hear was paid for in humiliation first. That's what makes it different from every other self-help philosophy you've been fed. This wasn't theorized in comfort. It was extracted from ruin. Stay to the seventh law. It's the one Machiavelli almost didn't put in writing. It might be the most dangerous and the most necessary thing you hear all year. Law 1. Appearances beat reality. Machiavelli watched Italian princes rise and fall for decades before he wrote a single word about power. And the first thing he noticed shattered everything he'd been raised to believe. People don't respond to who you are. They respond to who you appear to be. He wrote it plainly. Everyone sees what you seem to be. Few ever touch what you actually are. And those few don't dare go against the opinion of the many, because the many have the state's authority to defend them. Read that twice. Most people are living for a version of themselves nobody is even watching. Meanwhile, the people around them are reacting entirely to the performance, the tone in the room, the confidence in the handshake, the calm in a crisis. Machiavelli isn't telling you to be fake. He's telling you the world already runs on appearances, whether you accept that or not. The only question is whether you manage yours on purpose, or let it manage you. Think about the last time you judged a stranger in 30 seconds. A handshake, a tone of voice, the way someone held eye contact under pressure. You didn't wait for evidence. Nobody does. Machiavelli understood, centuries before psychology had a name for it, that human beings are lazy judges. We outsource our conclusions to surface signals. Because depth takes time nobody's willing to give a stranger. That's not a flaw in other people you can complain about. It's a fixed feature of how judgment works. And the only rational response is to stop resenting it and start directing it. Practice. Before you walk into any room that matters, ask one question. Not how do I feel, but what does this room need to see from me right now? That gap between the two is where power actually lives. Law 2. Fortune favors the bold, not the careful. Machiavelli had a strange, almost violent relationship with the idea of luck. He compared fortune to a river that floods without warning, tearing down everything in its path while the cautious stand frozen on the bank, watching their homes wash away because nobody built a levee in the calm season. Half of what happens to you, he said, is chance. The other half, maybe slightly less, is yours to control if you're willing to act before the storm arrives instead of reacting after. Here's the line that should sting a little. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is a woman who favors the young and the aggressive over the timid, because boldness commands her the way force commands anything unpredictable. Translate that out of its century and it still holds. Hesitation doesn't protect you from risk. It just delays which version of the storm hits you. The people you envy for their luck usually built the boat months before the flood came. That's not fortune. That's preparation wearing fortune's mask. Look at anyone you consider fortunate right now. The friend who got the promotion nobody saw coming. The founder who caught the trend at exactly the right moment. Pull back the footage and you'll almost always find months, sometimes years, of quiet, unglamorous positioning that happened long before the lucky break arrived. Fortune didn't choose them at random. It chose them because they were already standing in the one place the flood could actually lift them instead of drown them. Practice. Stop asking, what if this goes wrong? Start asking, what structure can I build today so that when it goes wrong, it doesn't sink me? That's the entire difference between Machiavelli's winners and his ruins. Law 3. The lion and the fox. This is the image Machiavelli is most remembered for, and almost nobody explains it right. A ruler, he said, needs to know how to act like a beast when necessary, and specifically, needs both the fox and the lion inside him. The lion cannot see traps. The fox cannot fight off wolves. You need the fox's mind to spot the trap, and the lion's force to survive the wolf. Most people only train one half. Some of us are all lion loud, forceful, direct, and completely blind to the quiet maneuvering happening 2 steps ahead of us. We get ambushed by people we never saw coming because we were too busy roaring to notice the trap being laid. Others are all fox brilliant at reading the room, sensing the angle, seeing 6 moves ahead, but when the moment finally demands force, demands a decision, demands teeth, they freeze. They outthink themselves into paralysis. Machiavelli's brutal insight: neither animal survives alone. Cunning without strength gets exploited. Strength without cunning gets ambushed. Notice how often you default to only one of these in your own life. Maybe you're the person who always confronts head-on, who mistakes bluntness for honesty and wonders why the same conflicts keep ambushing you from angles you never anticipated. Or maybe you're the person who always reads, always analyzes, always sees 6 moves ahead and still ends up losing. Because seeing the move and making the move are not the same skill. Practice. In every conflict, ask which animal the moment requires. Is this a trap I need to see or a wall I need to break? Most people apply the wrong animal to the wrong problem and call the resulting failure bad luck. Quick pause. If this is landing for you, tap that subscribe button and hit the like. It genuinely tells the algorithm to put this in front of more people who need to hear it. And it costs you nothing but 2 seconds. Now back to the laws, because the next one is the one that gets Machiavelli's name dragged through the mud for 500 years. Law 4. Feared is safer than loved. Here's the sentence that got Machiavelli's name turned into an insult for 5 centuries. He asked whether it's better to be loved or feared, and concluded carefully, reluctantly, that if you can't have both, fear holds longer than love does. Because love is a bond people break the instant it's convenient for them. Fear is a bond held together by the dread of consequence, and dread doesn't evaporate just because it's inconvenient. He wasn't glorifying cruelty. Read further and he immediately warns against being hated. Hatred, he says, is what actually destroys rulers. Fear and hatred are not the same thing, and confusing them is exactly how people misuse this law. What Machiavelli is actually describing is respect with teeth. The version of you that people don't test, don't push, don't quietly disrespect the moment your back is turned, not because they adore you, but because they know there's a cost to crossing you. Most people spend their whole life optimizing to be liked. Machiavelli would ask you a colder, more useful question. When the room gets hard, who actually holds their position, the one who was loved or the one who was respected? Think about every person in your life who has ever taken advantage of you. Chances are it wasn't someone who feared the consequences of crossing you. It was someone who correctly calculated that you'd forgive them, excuse them, or simply absorb the cost yourself rather than enforce a boundary. Love without consequence isn't a relationship. It's an open invitation. Practice. Stop asking, do they like me? Start asking, do they take me seriously? Likability without seriousness gets walked over by everyone, eventually, including the people who claim to love you. Law 5. Never reveal the whole hand. Machiavelli spent years as a diplomat before he ever wrote a page of philosophy. He sat across from kings, cardinals, and mercenary captains, watching how the powerful actually spoke, and what he noticed is that they almost never said what they meant. Not because they were liars by nature, because information is the one resource you can never get back once you've given it away. He wrote about rulers who kept their true intentions hidden until the exact moment action was required, because a plan spoken aloud too early becomes a plan other people can counter, copy, or sabotage before it ever moves. This is the part modern life has almost erased. We're taught to overshare, to narrate our every plan out loud for validation, to explain our strategy before we've even executed it. Machiavelli would look at that and see a room full of people voluntarily disarming themselves. Silence isn't secrecy for its own sake. It's leverage. The moment your plan is known, it can be blocked. The moment your next move is guessed, it can be countered. Think about how often you've announced a goal before you'd actually made progress on it, and then felt the motivation quietly drain out of you the moment the applause for merely saying it arrived. Machiavelli would tell you that was never an accident. The mind treats being seen as trying like a substitute for actual effort, and every person you told became, without meaning to, a small leak in the pressure you needed to finish. Practice. Before you explain your plan to anyone who isn't essential to it, ask, does this person need to know, or do I simply want them to be impressed? Machiavelli would tell you those are two very different reasons to talk. Law 6. Adapt the mask to the moment. Machiavelli's deepest and least comfortable observation was this: the men who fail aren't the ones who lack talent. They're the ones who only have one setting. He wrote about a commander who thrived through boldness his entire career until the political climate shifted toward caution. And that same boldness, the very thing that made him great, destroyed him. Because he couldn't adapt his nature to match the moment. This is the part almost everyone gets wrong about identity. We're told to be yourself, consistently, always. Machiavelli would ask, consistently loyal to what? Your values or your habits? Because those aren't the same thing. A person who is gentle in every single circumstance isn't virtuous. They're predictable, and predictable people get used. A person who is aggressive in every circumstance isn't strong. They're rigid, and rigid people get broken by the first situation that doesn't fit their mold. The people Machiavelli admired most weren't the ones with a single fixed personality. They were the ones who could read a room and become exactly what that room demanded, while never once losing sight of what they were actually trying to build underneath it. This is the difference between a chameleon and a coward. A coward changes because they're afraid of conflict. A chameleon changes because they understand that the mission stays fixed even when the method has to move. Machiavelli respected the second kind of person and had nothing but contempt for the first. Practice. Stop asking, what's my personality? Start asking, what does this specific moment require of me? And can I actually deliver it? Flexibility isn't weakness. Machiavelli would say rigidity is what gets good people erased from history. Law 7. The state is the only judgment that matters. This is the law Machiavelli buried at the end, almost as a confession. Everything he wrote gets reduced to one cynical phrase people love to misquote: the ends justify the means. He never actually wrote that sentence. What he wrote was more precise and far more uncomfortable. He said people judge a ruler by outcomes, not intentions. When a leader holds the state together, wins, survives, protects what he's responsible for, history calls him great, regardless of the private compromises it took to get there. Fail, no matter how noble your reasons, and history calls you naive. This isn't a moral instruction. It's an observation about how judgment actually works: brutally, unfairly, after the fact, based on results the crowd can see rather than intentions only you could feel. Here's what that means for you personally, stripped of politics. The excuses you're building right now: I meant well, I had good reasons, it wasn't my fault — none of that survives contact with outcomes. People, fairly or not, remember what happened, not why. Machiavelli isn't telling you to abandon your values. He's telling you that a value which never produces a result isn't a virtue. It's a story you tell yourself to feel better about losing. Be ruthless then about what actually works, not because outcomes are the only good, but because outcomes are the only thing anyone else will ever actually see. This is the law that makes the other six make sense. Appearances, timing, the fox and the lion, respect, silence, adaptability — none of them are moral positions. They're instruments. And Machiavelli judged every instrument the same way he judged everything else. Not by how it made him feel to use it, but by whether it actually held the state together when the wolves came. Practice. At the end of each week, don't ask yourself whether you tried hard or meant well. Ask whether the thing you were responsible for actually survived the week intact. That single question, asked honestly, will tell you more about your life than a decade of intentions ever could. Bringing it together: 7 laws. 1 mind behind them. 1 manage the appearance, because the world responds to it whether you do or not. 2 move before fortune floods the room, not after. 3 carry both the fox and the lion and know which one the moment needs. 4 earn respect that has teeth, not affection that has none. 5 protect your plan by protecting your silence. 6 adapt the mask, keep the mission. 7 let outcomes, not intentions, be your final teacher. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to make monsters. He wrote it because he'd watched good, well-meaning men lose everything to people who understood these 7 laws, while they themselves understood none of them. He wasn't asking you to become cruel. He was asking you to stop being naive. The next time someone smiles at you while quietly deciding whether you're useful, you'll know exactly what game is being played. And this time, you won't be the only one who doesn't know the rules. If this hits something real, send it to the person in your life still playing checkers in a room full of chess. They'll know exactly who they are the second they read the first line. And before you go, if you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment to fix that. This channel exists to pull the real, unfiltered psychology out of the minds history tried to sanitize or bury, and hand it to you without the watered-down version everyone else is too scared to teach. New breakdowns go up every week, and if today's video earned it, a like helps this reach the next person who's exactly where you were 20 minutes ago, smiling back at someone with no idea what game was actually being played. Drop a comment. Which of the 7 laws do you already use without realizing it? I read every single one, and I'll be replying down there today. Until next time, read the room before the room reads you.